Hey, Village Church, Pastor Mark here. We are glad you have joined us from all over the world and you are part of our church family. We're excited to be launching this series, The 7 Deadly Sins. We're going to spend the next 7 weeks exploring pride, lust, greed, envy, sloth, gluttony, and anger. The sins that derail us and the virtues that make us. We can fight against the sins that derail us, the things that make a mess of our lives. And we're going to talk about how we can win the race that God has set for us in life and not make a mess of our lives. These sins, historically, all through the church, have been seen as fatal to our spiritual progress in the world. I've been a pastor and in ministry now for 20 years. I've counseled a lot of people through a lot of pain and triumph in their lives. And when it boils down, oftentimes both of those things, the pain and the triumph of their life, can be drawn back to these 7 themes. The sin that the writer of Hebrews says so easily entangles us. These sins, we rarely stop in our lives, let alone in the church, to go, what are those sins? What's the sin that entangles us, that destroys us? And then what are the opposite of those sins? The virtues that make us, the things that make us kill it in life. What are those things and how do we get them so that we flourish, so that we win? So in the end, this series, this thing we're talking about for 7 weeks, it's about winning and losing in life. So why is this important? Well, sin, as much as skeptics want to look and go, the church is always droning on and on talking about sin. We need to move on. It's archaic. We've progressed in life. No. Here's the thing about sin. We all feel the effects of sin every single day on our lives, whether you're a Christian or not. We feel it in our families. We feel it in ourselves. We feel it amongst our friends. We see it play out on a macrocosm on the news. So sin is personal, but then it's cultural. There's 2 kinds of scales. And so the reality is we've got to talk about both of those things. But oftentimes we don't even know what to do about it. And we're worse off because from an atheistic, progressive perspective, what they say is, we'll figure out our own solutions. We can solve sin or any problems we have in life through science and technology and psychology. We're going to solve our own problems. We don't need God. That's the secular project. That's been in play for 200, 300 years. And here's the reality. It hasn't worked. Look at the world right now. The death, the racism, the disease, the division, the economic problems, the political problems, not to mention, statistically speaking, the rise of mental illness, the rise of suicide, obesity. Last year, believe it or not, was the first time in decades that life expectancy in the UK actually declined. What? How is that even possible with all the technology and all the progress that we have as a culture? See, here's psychologically why I think the reason is. Because we've lost the idea as a culture of sin. Here's what I mean. Ernest Becker, who was a psychologist back in the 70s, he wasn't a Christian at all, and he said, the plight of the modern therapeutic individual is that he or she is a sinner, check this, with no word for it. Think about that. He's going, we have something wrong with us, internally and externally, personally and socially, but we don't know how to explain it. We don't have a word for it. And so the burden becomes on us because there's no theological terms. We don't frame life spiritually at all. So what happens to the human situation? There's a rise, he said, of hyper-consciousness, of anxiety, of pressure, of pain, because we have nowhere to put all of the burden of our life. So that's why we need to talk about sin. This series, I want to solve it for you, because I think Christianity solves it for you. See, that's what we want, to save you from these sins. So what happens? So the 2 things, your relationship with God and your relationship with others can flourish. Your family, your friends, strangers. All of this stuff gets affected. So what we're going to do is we're going to hit the sins every single week, a different sin, and unpack how it plays out in our lives personally and how it plays out as a culture. And then we're going to do our best to solve it theologically, practically in your life. So let me introduce the 7 deadly sins. Where do they come from? They came from the Desert Fathers, especially Evagrius Ponticus. Back in the day, he was looking through the kind of different versions of sin that come up in the Bible. And then Pope Gregory I, around 600 AD, after Jesus, organized them into formally the 7 deadly sins. And what they basically said is, these things keep rising, so let's talk about them as ethical guidelines to figure out how to actually live lives that flourish. These people studied the Bible for attitudes and character traits that they deemed detrimental to a person's relationship with God and other people. They looked for the sins that kill a person's spiritual potential, the thing that cuts them off their ability to enter into the fullness of God's blessing. And they said, if I was to study the 66 books of the Bible, where is it? What is it? And these 7 things rose to the top. So the cool thing is, as I studied them, I realized also that not only do they have to do with our relationship with God, they have to do with our identity, which I was listening to a pastor speak a long time ago, and he said, if I was planting my church again, he planted a church in New York City years ago. He said, if I was planting it again today, one of the things I would talk about the most is identity, because that's what people want to know about, because we really want to talk about us. And so there's personality profiles out there. And actually one of the more famous ones draws a lot of its ideas about your personality and mine based on the 7 deadly sins. And it says there are certain sins that certain personality types actually build their life off of. So every single week we get to look into this series and go, is this me? Is this the one sin that defines me, that will destroy me? Or is this the virtue that could make me? Is this the thing I have to be aware of? And so part of all of our lives, we always need to be going, any of these sins can destroy me, but maybe this 1 or 2 is the thing that actually defines me. And so we need to start looking into it and saying, I got to be honest with myself. And then we got to figure out how to have victory, because at any moment, these things can overtake us. And so as we make this journey, here's what you got to understand. It's not about your spouse. It's not about your enemy. It's not about your friend. It's not about the guy at work. Listen to me. This whole series, these sins and how to beat them and have victory over them, it's about you. It's about you and the Lord and you and people. And it's about you flourishing in your life versus failing in life. That is what we want for you. Augustine, back in the day, said, there are 2 things that we gotta know. We have to get to the bottom of 2 things in our entire experience of life in order to flourish in this world. And here's what the 2 things are, he said. Know God and know thyself, he said. That's what this series is. John Calvin, way back in the day, he wrote something called the Institutes. And people recognize it as one of the greatest things ever written on Christianity. You know what the opening line to the Institutes is? It's this thick. You know what the opening sentence of Calvin's Institutes is? Our wisdom, insofar as it ought to be deemed true and solid wisdom, consists almost entirely of 2 parts: the knowledge of God and of ourselves. That's it. That's what this whole series is. We got to look into ourselves. We got to look at God and look at ourselves. Your sin might be lust. So we're going to talk about, be careful, or it can destroy you. How do you actually have victory over it? Your sin could be greed. How are you going to have victory over it? See, here's what you do. Here's the practical solution. Here's the gospel solution. Here's the biblical solution, so that we flourish and know Christ better, and we're going to actually practically get into the how-tos. And so this whole series, in a sense, is like the famous book by John Owen, The Mortification of Sin. Basically what he said is, you be killing sin or it will be killing you. That's the whole idea. Or the book of Romans, chapter 8, verse 13 said, if you live according to the flesh, you'll die. But if you live by the Spirit, you put to death the deeds of the body, you will live. That's what we're talking about. So if we lean into this, here's our hope and prayer. This could change your life. It could change my life if we're honest with it. Starting when you wake up tomorrow, the stuff you learn over the next 7 weeks could change you. And it could also change the generations that follow you. It could change your kids' lives and your grandkids' lives and your neighbors' lives and your church and your city's life. That's what we're talking about. I've seen it. People who stop doing certain rhythms and patterns in their life that are destructive and go on to thrive. I've seen kids get a new direction. See, that story, it starts to get written, and it's unreal when people start to change what they do and what they want to do. Because here's one thing that's true about this. we're all unique, meaning we all have different upbringings and hurts and wins and ways that our brain works and ways that we're tempted and not tempted, and thus one way that our discipleship works that might be different for different people. Jesus changes people in different ways. And part of that is that different people have different besetting sins, stuff that defines them, stuff that defines you. I was sitting around with a bunch of guys recently, and one thing you got to be careful of is not to borrow someone else's sin as if it's the one that defines you. And so 2 or 3 of the guys were talking about lust and how they can't get over lust, and it defines it, and they see it everywhere, and it derails me, and I can't believe it. And the next guy's like, man, no, that's not my thing, man. My thing's money. I'll do anything for more money. I will cut anybody off of the knees for more money if I'm honest with you. And see, this is what we got to understand about ourselves as we go. This not the person beside you. It might not be your sin. It's not everybody's. We got to start to get to know God and ourselves. So here's the thing. This whole series is kind of based on a premise that 1 Peter talks about. Peter says the devil is like a roaring lion and he stalks us. See, we could say that and know it and think we understand it, but have you thought about it? Like how does he stalk you? Because he's thinking about it at all times. How am I gonna take Mark down? How am I gonna separate him from God and his people? That's what the devil wants to do. And it's only by looking these sins square in the face that we're gonna figure out how he's trying to take you down, because that's what he wants to do. He wants to isolate you from others. And you know how he's gonna do that? Sin, 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 sin. Because then you start to drift and you start to go inside yourself. Then he has you. Because these sins, they ruin your soul first. Then they start to ruin your relationships. And so greed, some of you, I know people, all their relationships are viewed through the lens of how they can use this person to get more. And sooner or later, those people end up alone and scared, and their soul shrivels, and it destroys their relationship with God too. Because here's what they do. They're so used to using people to get stuff, even if they come to know Jesus. See, oftentimes we go, well, a person came to know Jesus and we're so excited. We don't even question their motive. See, there's a lot of people who come to Jesus to get something out of him. I want to go to heaven. I want to make myself feel better now. I want to get the girl. I want to get his blessing. And they elevate all those things above just getting him. That's what happens when we're constantly going back to that sin to make ourselves feel what? What are all these sins about? Why do we do them? They're not like we want more sin in our life. They're the messed up version of a thing that we feel. We really want to feel something. We want joy. We want to feel worth. We want to feel excitement. But that's not the way God set up a long-term joy. He's given us ways to long-term joy, and that's what we're going to talk about. What sin does is it does the opposite. It takes the good inclination and destroys it and destroys our soul, and we in that moment become less human, and we start to act out on it. And so what we're going to find in this series is each one of these sins is actually found in the Adam and Eve story. And every time that we hit a sin, I'm going to explain it from that story and then explain what it has to do with your life, my life, and the life of the world that we live in. This is the 7 deadly sins.
Dangerously corrupt selfishness. Putting one's desires, urges, needs, and whims before the welfare of other people. An excessive admiration of the personal image or self. An irrational belief that one is essentially better, superior, or more important than others. It is the root of all evil. You're not God. Stop trying to be.
So my wife has this thing she says to me when we're fighting. It's 2 words: stop talking. I don't like this. It causes me to totally explode. And I think the reason it does is 2 reasons. First, she's taking away my strongest weapon. I can talk my way in or out of almost anything. But I think deeper than that, it's affecting what we're talking about today. My pride. Stop talking. What does that mean? I'm not good enough. I'm not knowledgeable enough. I can't help you, right? What do you mean stop talking and I lose it? Say, the first sin we got to talk about in this series called The 7 Deadly Sins is pride. Let me give you the definition of pride. Excess belief in one's own abilities that interferes with the individual's recognition of the grace of God, or what Webster's dictionary says, a high opinion of one's own dignity, importance, merit, or superiority. We use words like egotistical, arrogant, selfish, vain, conceited, boastful, big-headed. The world revolves around them. But here's what we got to understand about this sin. There's two kinds of ways to be proud. There's the classic way. That's the loud, obnoxious, power, throw my weight around, bully type. But then there's a more subtle one. It looks humble and quiet and innocent and cancel culture type person. I'm better than everyone else and in no need of transformation myself. See, this is pride. It's also known as vanity. Pretty famous David Fincher movie back in the day. Don't watch it if you're squeamish. Called Seven, which is based on the 7 deadly sins. A serial killer goes around and kills people based on the 7 deadly sins, and the person he kills with this sin is a model, and he messes her face up because it's vanity. Because pride is an excessive view of oneself without regard for others, and that's the idea. And here's what pride does. It keeps you from God, and it destroys your life. So, let's ask this question. How important is talking about the sin of pride? Well, pride has been called the sin from which all other sins actually arise. It's kind of the sin upstream that every other sin that we're going to talk about and every other sin in your life kind of grows out of, a definitive sin in all of us. No matter how quiet and reserved you are, no matter how seemingly humble you are, this is the sin that leads to all other sins. C.S. Lewis back in the day called this the great sin. And here's what he said. There is one vice of which no man in the world is free, which everyone in the world loathes when he sees it in someone else, and of which hardly any people ever imagine that they're guilty themselves. I have heard people admit that they're bad-tempered, he says, or that they cannot keep their heads about girls or drink, or even that they're cowards. I do not think I have ever myself heard anyone accuse himself of this vice. And at the same time, I have very seldom met anyone who showed the slightest mercy to it in others. There is no fault which makes a man more unpopular, and no fault which we're more unconscious of in ourselves. And the more we have it ourselves, the more we dislike it in others. The vice I am talking of is pride or self-conceit. You may remember, he says, when I was talking about sexual immorality, he was talking about that in an earlier chapter of this book he's writing, I warned you that the center of Christian morals did not lie there. Well, now we've come to the center. According to Christian teachers, the essential vice, the utmost evil is pride. Unchastity, anger, greed, drunkenness, and all that, they're mere flea bites in comparison. It was through pride that the devil became the devil. Pride leads to every other vice, he says, and then he says this, it is the complete anti-God state of mind. See, all of that is why we got to start with this. It filters down to everything else. It's the anti-God state of mind because pride is the one thing that must go for us to ever submit to Jesus. You've got to come to the end of yourself and be humble enough to say, Jesus, you are actually the Lord. You're not just Savior. You're not just treasure. You're actually Lord, which means you're in charge of my life. You're on the throne, not me. I remember in Bible college, one of the first books I ever read in Bible college, it was a book on discipleship. And I remember this phrase always jumped out at me. It said, when you are on the throne of your life, Christ is on the cross. But when Christ is on the throne, you are on the cross. See, this is what it is. It's that Jesus gets to be the one on the throne, not me. And so he gets to define, which means Jesus is the one who gets to say, here's what to do with your sex life. Here's how politics works. Here's what you do with your money and your marriage and raising kids and work. All of that needs to come under him in order to ever get salvation. See, here's what Christianity, I heard a speaker one day define Christianity like this. He said, you know what we are? I'm one beggar telling another beggar where to get bread. See, that's it. Do you wake up every morning and go, here's the crazy thing, man, I'm alive, right? I'm sinful, and I woke up this morning, I deserve nothing, and God didn't kill me last night. Perfect. Because every day you should just wake up and be like, I'm actually living. This is crazy. Like every breath you be like, oh my goodness, grace of God, grace of God. See, the only reason we don't do that is because of pride. Because you think in the back of your brain that you deserve it. So think about how that filters down to your life. Ergo, my boss did this. My friend said this. I got a bad break. I can't believe my family member did this. You know what all that is? It's to misunderstand the fact that grace is the only reason you're breathing. The minute you forget that, you think you deserve something, we all fall back into this destructive sin. And this is why it's a crazy sin. And this is why it's so hidden. See, here's the thing. When you cheat on your spouse, like you wake up beside the person, you're like, oh, this is not my wife, right? That's clear. That's a sin. But when do you become proud? See, it's slippery. And it's true about most of the sins. When do I become greedy? Right? When do I become a glutton? When do I get too angry that it tips into wrath or anger? It's especially true about pride, and it filters down to everything else. Now, where did this sin come from? Adam and Eve, go back. Every single one of these sins is going to be rooted kind of in the Adam and Eve fall story. You know, God put them in the garden. He made them perfect. And he said, I want you to be fruitful and multiply. And then they fell into sin. He had said, you can eat of any tree in the garden. You can live life. I've given you everything beautiful, amazing. I want you to do all these things. But he said, I got one rule. You can't eat of one tree in the garden, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. I don't want you to eat from it. And what did they do? They ate from it. Why? Because it was the sin of pride. What did the devil say? I want you to eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Why? Because when you do, you're going to be like God. And you're going to know good and evil. And this is what Adam and Eve did. I want to be like God. I want to know stuff. I want to do stuff. I want to be stuff. I want to be a big deal to people. I'm not happy under God. I can be equal to God, and that caused their death. And it causes death spiritually, emotionally, and relationally in your life every single day. This is the foundational problem in all of us every single day. This is why the Bible is so jacked up against pride. One of the definitive verses in regard to this sin, in regard to all the sins we're going to talk about, I love it. One of my favorite passages in the whole Bible. 1 John chapter 2, 15 to 16. Here's what John says. I love this. Listen to this. Do not love the world or the things in the world. If anyone loves the world, the love of the Father is not in him. For all that is in the world, and then he says this is how he defines all that is in the world. The desires of the flesh and the desires of the eyes and the pride of life is not from the Father, but is from the world. The pride of life, that's what will destroy you. The book of Proverbs sends out a massive warning. Pride goes before destruction and a haughty spirit before a fall. Galatians 6. If anyone thinks he is something when he is nothing, he deceives himself. I can just go on and on and on with all these texts. Point of the Bible. Stay away, stay away, stay away. Every other sin gets fed by pride. Pride convinces sloth that someone else should do it for you so you can sit around and do nothing. Pride convinces lust that my pleasure comes before what God has laid out for me in regard to doing sexuality. Pride convinces anger that if I don't get my way, someone will have to pay. Pride convinces gluttony that I better get my fill. It convinces greed. I should have more than everybody else. It convinces envy that I deserve better than you. Basically, pride thinks it's all about you. I'm the one who makes stuff happen. I deserve stuff. So here's the first thing we got to understand as we attack this thing. You have to come to a place of self-awareness to understand that you're probably self-deceived right now. You think you're someone not defined by pride, but you are. I read a story the other day. A CEO of a Fortune 500 company pulled up to a gas station. He noticed his wife was talking to the station attendant. Yapping it up, gets back in the car. he says, what's up? She's like, oh, I actually dated him in high school. And the guy goes, well, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, boy, aren't I glad I'm married to you, Fortune 500 CEO, because if I didn't, I'd be the wife of a gas station attendant. And his wife said, actually, I'm not thinking that at all. I was thinking if I had married him, he'd be the CEO of a Fortune 500 company and you'd be a gas station attendant. This is what we got to understand. There's always a great person behind the thing, and you weren't some self-made thing. This is my life. People come up to me like, oh, it's so cool. You get to do this stuff. You got a church. You got great things. You got the books and all this. Yeah, cool. You know why? Because I have a wife that spends days and nights alone for this. Sacrifices. She's smarter than me. She's actually more loving than me. She's more strategic than me. She feeds me ideas. She helps. She encourages. No man is an island. I'm here because I'm here because friends helped us get here as a church. Mentors poured into me. God gave me a passion. People gave funds. A church took a chance and sent us out with a bunch of people and sacrificed. It wasn't me. Don't be dumb. Pride is the thing that tells you you did this. And that's the thing that has to die in you. This plays out a million ways in our culture. Think about your life in regard to social media. Why do you create the false identity that you do online? You look good, so people will think I'm hot. I gotta make sure I put this filter on so my six-pack pops like a champ. I gotta make sure, oh, don't do that when you take 40 pictures of yourself because you don't want the one with the bad, and then you put on, and you got the pop and digs. And I want people to think I'm hot, strong, cool, that I have friends, and it's all about you. Why are you obsessed with the news right now? Some of you, this is where the deep theology and psychology comes. We hide behind, well, I gotta know what's going on in the world. You know what I think some of us watch the news for? To feel better about ourselves, because when you watch the news, you always find someone more messed up than you. That guy murdered 5 people. Whew. Well, I didn't. Boy, I'm good. Politically, you know why you love politics so much? Because every politician you talk about is so dumb. And so you're like, look at how dumb they are. They can't fix anything. You feel good about yourself. You see what that's doing? It's the inverted side. It's what philosophers have called the grave digger effect. We do something so well that it creates a gravedigger effect where it starts to work against us negatively. Think about it culturally speaking. We live in Vancouver. Many of you live in Calgary, Toronto, different parts of the world. We have people that are part of Village Church from over 100 countries. So go and spend time in your cities and look around at the mass of people as they walk around. Today I was down in Vancouver and I was looking at people. The education, the wealth, it's unbelievable. And you know what's done that? The Protestant Reformation created capitalism and jobs and ways of structure, and there's been wealth created. All these different things have happened. And people say, look. The gravedigger effect is this. We don't need God anymore. And it's created a pride. Look at on your social media right now. Everyone's a doctor all of a sudden. Amazing. How many people, I didn't know how many of you were epidemiologists on my Facebook. I mean, it's amazing that all of you, it's awesome, right? All of a sudden, why do we do that? Because we look for these things so that, in a sense, yes, we're trying to share good information. It's awesome, and I love that. But there's a piece of it sometimes when I share an article on something that's calling someone out, I'm snubbing them, and it makes me feel good about myself. And what happens when we get overtaken by pride is it begins to remove empathy in our life. Because we're looking at ourselves the whole time. We become selfish and instead of being selfless, which is what God calls us to. See, what is every single one of these sins? It's a twisting of a good thing. No one wakes up in the morning and goes, I want more pride in my life. No, it's a twisting and a distortion of something God built into us that's actually good. I want to succeed. I want to be excellent at a thing. I mean, we as a church, we have this like value among the staff of excellence. We want to do everything with excellence. I want to be successful. I want to have impact. I want to, do a thing that has influence in life. I want to do all that. And so we don't want to be downers. So many people, especially in Canada, those of you who are watching around the world, awesome. In Canada, there's some tall poppy syndrome, it's called. Anybody successful, it's like, chop them down. We all need to be the same, all right? Why is that person getting excited? Everyone calm down. When I get up in front of a crowd internationally and preach a sermon, man, people are like, throw it down, amen, what's up? I get in front of Canadians, it's like, that was good. It was good, huh? Yeah, it was good. It's like, I don't want to be a downer. I want you to go after excellence. I want you to go after stuff with passion. I want you to be successful. The problem is we take that and we turn it into a destructive spirit. And our culture basically says anything that didn't come recently, anything that recent technology and knowledge didn't create, it's not even worth a book written 30 years ago, old. Like, this is how my kids talk to me. They're like, Dad, you grew up in the olden times. I was born in 1980. They think I was born in the olden times. You know what the olden times means to them? It means like when a telephone couldn't just like design your whole life and you couldn't. My kids, they like just talk to stuff. They like walk in a room, they're like, hey, turn on the lights to this, put the degrees to this. I'm like, what is going on? Yeah, I had to do stuff physically. Is that what you mean by olden times? And we don't. So what do? We look on the internet. It gives us all the knowledge we need at my fingertip. Like, I can know anything. Remember when we used to have to sit around and be like, who was in that movie? And then we just wouldn't know? That was crazy. That's the olden times. Now, who's in that movie? Their whole life. And at that moment, pride destroyed us because we think we are gods. What would that do to a psyche of an entire generation? And if we are gods, of course we are proud because there's nothing above us. This is what naturalism says. The whole philosophy of atheism says there is nothing above you. So if there's nothing above you, what's the point of looking above? So what are you going to do? You're only going to look down at people, down at concepts. Let me tell you something. Christianity, the God who was up and came down, is the only way to save you and the only way to kill this sin in you. The Jesus who came to deal with this stuff in your life, he's the one who comes down into the arena and gets dirty to give you true life. We see in him a kind of humility, and then our life gets changed by it, and that's the only way to truly become humble. All of pride destroys you. Jesus can destroy all pride. See, he spoke about this all the time. He would tell stories all the time that would just level people and humble them and correct their whole life. He tells us one story in Luke chapter 18 that's the great call out of the spirit of pride in that culture and to you and me. Listen to this story he tells. And this is what Jesus' stories did. They just messed people up. They messed up the furniture in their brain and had to reshuffle it. And so he says, to some who were confident of their own righteousness, I'm not saying that's you, and looked down on everybody else, Jesus told this parable. 2 men went up to the temple to pray, one a Pharisee and the other a tax collector. The Pharisee stood up and prayed about himself. God, I thank you that I'm not like other men, robbers, evildoers, adulterers, or even like this tax collector. I fast twice a week and give 1/10 of all I get. Does that sound like you maybe once in a while when you, watch the news or you go on social media and you see adulterers, thieves, evildoers, and you go, man, I'm just glad I'm a Christian. I am glad that I'm just following the Lord, following the Bible. I don't have any of those problems in my life. You're the first person. But the tax collector stood at a distance. He would not even look up to heaven, but beat his breast and said, God have mercy on me, a sinner. I tell you, here's the scandal of Jesus, that this man, rather than the other, went home justified before God. For everyone who exalts himself will be humbled, whether in this life or the next. And he who humbles himself will be exalted. See, that's what we got to do. So how does this sin of pride destroy us? Three things we got to realize. First, it skews our vision of ourselves. So we don't understand who we are and who we aren't, right? That's what verse 11's about. I'm not that guy. I'm this self-made, I'm good at this, I'm self-aware, I go to church. This is one of the biggest problems of our time. If we don't see ourselves as one beggar telling another beggar where to get bread, then we don't get it. And if we get that wrong, everything else gets messed up because there becomes this pressure on our lives. It becomes a burden. We have to succeed in life. We have to win. We have to be better than the other guy. We have to always get ahead, and it destroys us. Life isn't a gift from God. Well, then it's a gift from myself. To us, by me, and I got to do it. And we define whether we win or lose by all these things that we look at. So no wonder everyone's anxious. No wonder everyone's stressed. No wonder suicide's on the rise. Life expectancy has dropped. In every other culture, there's been a sense of divine where the gods or God could take a burden from you. They were in control. They were sovereign. And when there was suffering, it was them that was in charge. Now it's just us. So yes, you're going to sweat. Because the good and bad, it's all you. Craig Gay, who is this philosopher, he said these words. He said, the characteristic modern theme, given the secular stress upon taking control of the world, is anxiety. The vast expansion of human responsibility for the world has turned out to be a very heavy burden. We can't even bear the burden of trying to be gods. This is the freedom of the second guy in the story. C.S. Lewis years ago pointed out the fact that pride is fundamentally a comparative sin. He said that pride doesn't actually get a ton of pleasure out of just being rich or good looking or smart. It's not just good enough to have money and be good looking and be smart. You have to be smarter and good looking better than the other guy. It's comparative. If you need more than everyone else. And that's where the sin starts to take effect in your life. And listen, it happens with everyone. It's not just them out there. It happens in my life. It happens in my friends. I remember the first time I walked in and met with a pastor. I was like, I feel called to go into ministry. I don't know what to do. Do you think a guy like me, now I smoked at the time. I just started going to church, so I probably swore a bunch. I wasn't like the righteous man that you see before you at that time. And I went into this pastor. I'm like, I feel kind of called to go into ministry, but I don't know what to do. You know what he did? He handed me like a Greek New Testament. It was this big. I barely know how to speak English, let alone Greek. He goes, here, take this. And by the way, if you do this, your whole life is going to be one big fishbowl, and everyone's just going to judge you and your family. So you better get steel underwear on, and I would say you should walk away from this. You know what's in his brain at that moment? You know what's in his soul? Something Jesus hated called religious pride. It's a thing. He could be good enough to do this job, but not me. Or think of cancel culture right now. What is the fundamental idea? You did something 20 years ago, and I'm going to cancel you because of it. Why? Because I'm better than you. Or people who just sit around tables and they cut down other families, as I've seen over and over again in my life. The current climate, all of it is you feel you need to tell people that they're bad or that they're good, and you're the arbiter of that reality. People who love to get into all of these ideas, it's about, I know more than you. The reason I'm going to fight with you on social media is because I have a secret knowledge to a real thing. This is Gnosticism. It's been around for 2,000 years. I know politics. I know this, left, right, whatever, and there's a pride in it. I'm right, you're wrong. I'm a good person, you're a bad person. And here's the problem. It's a hard one for all of us because we're told to think positive about ourselves, right? As kids, we grow up and it's like, you can do anything in life. You can accomplish anything, right? And so what happens? You're a snowflake, you're unique, do a bunch of things, and we try to accomplish that. How do people who've been told their whole life, all of those things, ever become humble? How do they realize what Lewis pointed out? That humility is not thinking less of yourself. It's thinking of yourself less. That's the pivot. My wife does something that makes me uncomfortable. She does a lot of things, including saying, stop talking. One of them is she'll like get into other people's lives when we're in like a place, but they're strangers and it's to help them. So like yesterday we were at a restaurant with our kids and we saw this other family over here and they had kids and there was sun beaming on this little girl's face and my wife kept trying to work with that family to try to figure out how to get the sun out of this little girl's face. And at one point I'm just sitting there eating. I'm like, honey, just leave it alone. Like we got our meal here. They'll figure it out. They got a father at the table. And she's working 10 minutes to figure this out. And then of course she figures it out and the father's like, I couldn't figure it out. And it's like, of course she's right. Every time she's right. And you know what that does sometimes? Both in reality and spiritually, actually, it saves lives. She was at an airport and saw a little baby. She was coming back from Uganda, and it was tied on the front of a mom, and it seemed to be going purple, and the mom never noticed. This is like 5-6 months ago, and the mom was talking, and my wife interrupted and said, we got to get that baby off the front of you. Unhook the baby. The mother starts freaking out. And my wife sits there and starts to bring this baby back to life until the people came in. This is a Ugandan airport. It's not like they had defibrillated, like stuff going on. Literally saved the baby's life. Handed it back. The medics came and said, you saved the baby's life. Would have been over. Why is she that? Why don't I do it? Because of pride. She does it because the only way to kill pride is your reputation has to die. You got to be willing to look silly and get it wrong once in a while in order to step out of your little comfortable thing you do. See, this is life. It's an understanding of yourself, and if you get that wrong, you're a mess. Okay, here's the second thing. Pride skews the way we look at others. We end up, not just the way we look at ourselves and our ability to die to self, as Christianity calls us to. You know, that Christianity calls you to die to yourself, not to go inside yourself, not to find yourself, to die to yourself. What happens then? Well, if you don't die to yourself, then the way you look at others is skewed. You're constantly looking down on them. That's what the story does. Thank God I'm not an evildoer. Thank God I'm not an adulterer. Thank you, Lord, that I'm not this and this and this. And you feel better about yourself. The other day I was out with friends for dinner, and we were driving home from downtown Vancouver, and we drove past this section, if you've ever been to Vancouver, where there's a lot of homelessness and drug addicts. And I drove through it, and I felt pity for them. But you want to know what else I felt, if I'm dead honest with you? I felt a little proud that wasn't me. I mean, I've made some good decisions in my life versus them. Isn't that what happens? Forgetting for a split second that most of them were probably abused as kids. Stuff they didn't choose. Stuff I didn't choose not to happen to me. That's what happens. Jesus has this amazing text in the Bible, Matthew chapter 21. He says, and let this just rock you. He says, prostitutes get into the kingdom before the righteous. How crazy is that? Literally, you're going to be lined up going to heaven, and there's going to be messed up freaks and geeks, as one poet said, on the way up to heaven before you. You're sitting there in your church clothes and your righteousness, and they get in before you. See, why does the Bible say that pride comes before a fall? What kind of fall? Here's what I've seen in your marriage. You think everything's great, so you stop working on stuff. You stop serving, you stop loving, you stop trying to figure out the love language, you stop love and respect, you stop all of it. And all of a sudden, divorce papers are in front of you because of neglect. It works out in work. I see pastors, I see leaders. There was a leader of a top university in a Christian university in the US that just got fired a couple weeks ago because he posts pictures of himself and another woman, and they were doing all these random things that were half naked. Why does that happen? Because you start to think you're untouchable, and then boom. This is what happens in any of our lives. It can happen. Friendships get destroyed. Finances get destroyed because you get ahead of yourself. Your spiritual life gets destroyed. Why? Because you think you can walk with God without a prayer life, without a devotional life, and then bang, it all falls apart. People sit in my office and tell me the people I hang out with as a pastor aren't godly enough for them. That's actually happened to me multiple times. People will evaluate the people that they've seen from a distance. They know nothing about them, but they say, those people you hang out with, they don't seem very godly. And in that moment, their pride has made them forget the gospel. They have this religious filter, lens, level of holiness they've constructed that they feel better about themselves and they feel better than everybody else. And the gospel comes along and goes, well, who you compare? The only person you get to compare yourself to is God himself. This is amazing grace. How sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. You can never be saved unless you understand yourself to be a wretch. The more pride one has in themselves, what one writer has pointed out, a fascinating thing, the more you dislike it in other people. If you want to know actually how proud you are, just ask yourself how much you dislike it in other people. Because the reason that you think that person is so loud at the party, the reason you think, oh, they're such a jerk, is because you wanted to be the one at the party. See, that's the thing. Everyone else's pride is competing with everybody else. And here's the other fascinating thing about it. Pride is the only sin that is, it's the sin that kind of is the reason nations fight, people fight, families fall apart. See, every other vice, you could probably bring some people together and have some fun, right? Like you could find some good times and jokes around drunkenness. You could sleep around and have a lot of fun. But pride always means fighting and disunity between people and you and God. So when she looks at me and says, stop talking, I blow up at her. I blow up at myself because I feel like I'm in a corner and I just can't, and it doesn't help me and God. Her and I could have a lot of fun around a lot of sins. But when my pride gets hit, it's nothing but enmity. This is what's true about your life. Third and final thing it does. It skews our vision of us in relationship to God. You'll notice verse 14 in the story, it says, it was him that went away justified. The only way to be saved, the only way to get right with God is to humble yourself. Pride has to die. See, a proud person will never say, Jesus is the one I need. I'm a sinner. I need grace. Life isn't about me. See, if you're there, God can't save you. If you don't throw yourself on his mercy, as long as you're proud, you cannot know God. A proud man is always looking down on things and down on people. And as long as you're looking down, you cannot see something that's above you. All right, so all of this raises a terrible question. How is it that people who are eaten up with pride can say they believe in God and appear to be very religious? How's that possible? Here's what one philosopher said. The reason it's possible, and it might be possible in your life, I don't know you, is because you're worshiping an imaginary God. You theoretically admit to yourself to be nothing in the presence of this God, but are really all the time imagining how he approves of you and thinks you far better than ordinary people. This happens all the time, especially in ministry. I'm a pastor, so I'm like, oh, God, I'm so humble. And it's like, no, I'm just better than them. And so as one writer says, you pay a little bit of imaginary humility over here and you get out of it a whole bunch of pride toward your fellow man. And for the same reason, pride can often be used to beat down, this is crazy, the simpler sins about us. Like a teacher will appeal to a little boy's pride to make him behave well. Many people have overcome lust or being a coward or being angry all the time only because they think this is beneath me. And in that moment, as C.S. Lewis says in Mere Christianity, in that moment, the devil laughs. He's perfectly content to see you become brave or sexually pure or self-controlled, provided all the time he's setting up in you pride. Just as he would be quite content, he says, to see your flu cured if he was allowed in return to give you cancer. This is how diabolical it can be. When you look down on others so much that you do not care what they think of you, which is kind of crazy because you actually think to yourself, I don't really care what they think of me, which actually sounds really good. But in that moment, the only reason you're saying I don't care what they think of me is because you're saying it proudly. You're like, I don't actually care what they think of me, not because I'm actually godly, but because they're not worth caring about. Think about how messed up that is. How do we fight this sin? I was reading this book the other day, and it talked about how we need to constantly think of salvation as restoring not just kind of a relationship with God, but an estrangement from God. Like salvation is that we were lost from him, but we get him back. And I think there's a piece of that has to hit us in regard to that's the way we're going to become humble again. We got to remember who we are. I was reading a story the other day of Bill Bradley, who was this basketball player and politician and whatever. And he had gone out for dinner with a bunch of people. And he was a senator, and he was sitting there having dinner, and he asked the waiter, he said, hey, can I get some butter? And the guy's like, yeah. And then 10 minutes goes by, and he's like, hey, can I get some butter? And the guy's like, yeah. And then, another 10 minutes goes by, and he just gets fed up, and he just goes to the waiter, and he's like, do you know who I am? He says, I'm a Rhodes Scholar. I'm Bill Bradley. I'm a professional basketball player. I'm a world champion. I'm a United States senator. And the waiter responded, perhaps you don't know who I am. I'm the guy who's in charge of the butter. See, every now and then we need someone like that to bring us back to reality. We need to remember who we really are, and what's out of our hands will follow. So here's some things you got to do. First, you got to identify the lies that you are believing right now. If the world is always against you, and it's always their fault, and it's always those people and them, and then you're defined by pride. The world revolves around you. You're a narcissist, and Jesus says we need to repent and become the second guy in the story. Okay, secondly, you got to understand God, that he's holy, he's infinite, his glory is never ending, his goodness is unsearchable. He works all things according to the counsel of his will. And when we start to get a massive view of God, see, pride comes from a view of God that's too low. So we got to fight to revere him if we want to be humble. And that's why John the Baptist comes along. He goes, he must increase, I must decrease. That's the posture of humility. And so we got to take some truths in our lives. We got to understand God's greatness. He's so big and you're so small, and that should humble you. He's in charge, not you. There's this great story that Jesus tells in Matthew 20, where he talks about a bunch of guys who had been agreed that they would be paid a certain amount of money if they would just come and work in this field. And so these guys show up at like 7 a.m. and they work, and then some other guys come at like noon, and then some other guys come at like 4. And day's done at like 5, and the guy lines everybody up, and he says, hey, I'm going to pay all you now, and he pays them all the same. And the guys who were there in the morning are like, how are you paying us the same? Don't you know what I deserve? Don't you know what I've done? I've done stuff harder than them. I've worked harder than them, and they're getting the same thing. The master, of course, who's God, gives them all the same and says, hey, I agreed to pay you this, and you agreed to it. I'm giving these guys the same even though they worked an hour, because this is the mathematics of grace. We get what we don't deserve. Jesus Christ got what we deserve. We get what we don't deserve. The overwhelming grace of God. He took on the punishment for us. Philippians 2 says, you want a way to remember this? He tells the story of Jesus Christ, who is equal with God, dying on a cross. And he says he died, he was beaten to even death on a cross. And that whole passage, you know what it's about? It's about him saying, and I want all you guys to be humble. Because here's the thing, he says, I never want you to think you're better than anyone else. So how do we beat this sin? We got to ask God to grind it out of us by understanding the gospel so deeply. And as Romans 8 talks about, which is one we'll come back to over and over again in this series, the only way you're going to be killing sin is if you focus in on it and you use the power of the Spirit to bring life. Is that you? Are you willing to go, God, by your Spirit, kill this sin in my life so that I can truly live? Father, I honestly pray right now for everyone watching this, starting with me, that you would kill this sin that filters down, this sin that the writer of Hebrews says that so easily entangles, that destroys my life and the lives of everyone watching this. Take this sin from us. Let us so have a vision of how big you are and how glorious you are and the beauty of the cross and the humility it took for Jesus to come and do what he did, and let it change us. Let that truth of the cross and the resurrection actually change us. And understand that the starting points for salvation, there's people watching this who don't know anything about you yet, that they would know that the starting point is exactly what the second guy in Jesus' parable is about. The guy who just beats his chest and looks to the ground and goes, I can't do this. Outside of what you've done for me, I can't do this. I don't deserve this. But I'll take the salvation you purchased for me, and let us see people right in this moment actually come to know you because of it. Take this sin from us and let us live out the virtue of humility to your glory and for the good of people. In Jesus' great name we pray. Amen.